Hey, George, you're a scientist.
I'm a chemist, yes.
Right, you're a scientist. So, in another one of our discussions here in the, what are we hypothetically in? Like a coffee shop? The place where we are
Uh,
having these conversations.
yeah.
Yeah,
We'll go with coffee shop.
Coffee shop. Maybe this will be the one episode that'll have coffee shop sound effects in the background. In the course of our the course of our conversation in this coffee shop, I had said something about like I misused in a conversation, I think catalyst or reagent. Like I used one, and you were like, "Oh no, that would actually be the other," or something like that. And I kind of then had that like all the sound dulled out, and my vision kind of went black, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm not sure I actually understand what the difference between those things is, and I wanna." So this question actually comes from me. What is the difference between a reactant, a reagent, a catalyst, and a product?
Well, darn it, Lions, I'm a chemist, not a chemist. So, unfortunately, this is a chemistry question. So, if I get it wrong, this is going to be really embarrassing.
Yeah. And I
that being said,
appreciate that you occasionally still take these on because you're putting more of yourself on the line.
Well, and this is one where the thing that always makes me worried about these is that I'm like, this is the way I remember it. And then I'll go out and like double check to make sure that I'm remembering it properly. But then there's always a part of me that's like, but what if I actually don't? Like, there's that 1% doubt in my mind of like, how certain, because I checked it like 3 days ago, but that was 3 days ago, man. What if
things could have changed?
Yeah, right. And actually, the thing that pulls at my mind is, what if in those 3 days my brain has already tainted it? You know. But with my very limited knowledge and very limited expertise, even in the expertise that I ostensibly have, I will attempt to opine this. So, if I were just to ask what are they, this whole episode would be about 2 minutes long. And also not very interesting. So first I'm going to answer what are they, and then I'm going to answer why are they.
So what you should have said was, darn it, Lions, I'm a chemist, not a philosopher.
There you go. Everybody asks what is a reagent. Nobody ever asks how is a reagent. So reagents are all of the ingredients. That's all the stuff. So reactants and catalysts are both reagents. So they're things that you need in order to do the chemistry that you're setting out to do. Reactants are specifically the starting stuff that is consumed by the reaction, right? So, for example, if you were to combust something, you would have a hydrocarbon and oxygen. Those would be your reactants, right? And then your products, which are produced by the reaction, would be carbon dioxide and water, right? A catalyst is something that helps the reaction along, but is not consumed in the reaction. So
this is the part I think I struggle with, because how is it participating, but none of it is used up? Like, my brain just somehow struggles with this.
It's like, Edward Elric in your mind is screaming like, no, that's not alchemy. So that's right. And that's kind of why we need to say, why are there catalysts? Like, why, how does that happen? How does that work? So the interesting thing is chemicals, in my opinion, to anthropomorphize them a bit, are very zen, right? So they are chill AF, right? So they want to be in the lowest energy state that they can reasonably be in, kind of all the time, right? So chemicals, that's all they want. They want to just be in the lowest possible energy state. So in order to get them into different energy states, we need to do some work, right? But the most interesting thing is that even if a chemical is in a non-lowest energy state, if you want to get it into that lower energy state, you have to transition it from where it's at to where it ends. And it takes energy in order to do that, because the transition state is actually a higher energy state than its base form, right? So let's say that you've got a molecule that has energy in 5 energy units, right? And then it can undergo a reaction to get down to 2 energy units. It wants to do that. But the transition state could be anywhere between 6 energy units and 50 energy units, right? For it to climb that hill before it'll slide all the way down, right? So that's kind of how basically all chemical reactions work, and why like a lot of times it says add chemical A and B together and then heat, and then when you heat them, now they have enough energy to go through their transition state and then do the other exothermic reaction, which then pushes them into the ground state, which is also why exothermic reactions tend to be so explosive, is because the energy that's being released in the reaction gives the other molecules enough energy to get past their transition area and then also to decompose into whatever their product is. So catalysts help bridge that energy gap. So they make it so that way the transition energy level is lower than it would normally be. And that's where the catalyst comes in, to where it's helping, but it's not consumed.
And is this through a chemical process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a good example, right? So a way to think about it is that the product, the reactants, right, and are all the C-level people in a room who need to create the product of good ideas for the company, right? The catalyst would be the facilitator who helps keep them on track, right? So way more gets done if you have somebody who is facilitating that meeting, right?
And it is important at the end of your meeting not to consume the facilitator.
Yeah, they get mad at you when you do that. Yeah. No. So at the end of it, we killed and ate the facilitator. No. They were just supposed to be a catalyst. You were supposed to eat the C-level people. So a good example of this is a catalytic converter in a car. This was the example I decided to use because it's got catalyst right in the name.
It does. And I was wondering if you were going to say that because the reason because I don't know anything about cars. I'm not a car.
I don't know either. I had to look all this up.
I'm not a car person, but I know that a catalytic converter is a thing that cars have, because in the Blues Brothers, when he picks up Jake from the prison and he is explaining why the new car he has is better than their old car, he says it's from a time before catalytic converters, so it'll run good on regular gas. And like,
I don't think any of that's right, but
I have no idea. And there's a chance I'm misquoting it, but the point is like, I know the word catalyst from the car part catalytic converter that I also know nothing about.
I'm not a chemist and I'm not a car person, but I do like the Blues Brothers. And in the Blues Brothers,
that is the summary. Yes, I do like the Blues Brothers. I like the Money Pit.
I've used that. Sorry, this is completely afield, but I've used that a number of times now when somebody's like, oh, well, you just don't understand. Like, it was about a video game too. I think it was Elden Ring, where they were like, dude, the artwork, the this, the that, like, it's such a beautiful, well-honed, well-made game. How can you not like it? I like the Money Pit.
Yes.
That is my answer to that question.
It's so good.
Anyways, so in a catalytic converter, so specifically, and now this is the part where, darn it, I'm a chemist, not a car engineer, right? Or an automotive scientist. So I may get a lot of this wrong, but I do think that the example stands, right? So in this case, the reactant, so the catalytic converter, the main thing that it tries to do is it tries to take the dangerous combustion byproducts and turn them into less dangerous byproducts, right? Because what we want from a combustion engine is the energy released in combustion. We don't really care about any of the stuff that it produces, right? And part of the issue is that if you have a lot of hydrocarbons and you have not a lot of oxygen, it'll still combust. It just forms carbon monoxide instead of carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide isn't great. Carbon monoxide is way worse. So the catalytic converter, it actually takes a couple of different gases and turns them into less heinous things. But it's specifically the reaction that we're going to be talking about is carbon monoxide into carbon dioxide, right? And that's actually the transition state from CO to CO2 is actually pretty high. So if again, just to use arbitrary units, if CO has an energy level of 5 and CO2 has an energy level of 2, like CO has an energy level of like 10. It takes a lot of energy to get it up that hump until it can go down to the other side, right? So specifically, there's 3 catalysts in a catalytic converter. platinum, palladium, and rhodium, which are all kind of cool metals. But specifically, platinum is the one that interacts with carbon dioxide. And so what it does is the platinum metal allows for carbon dioxide to carbon dioxide bonded to platinum metal is actually requires very like near zero transition area. It just wants to bond to that. So it immediately bonds to the platinum, right? And so then oxygen is the same way. Oxygen likes bonding to platinum, so it immediately bonds to platinum. But what they like doing even more than bonding to platinum is bonding to each other. So the platinum allows the oxygen to separate out in a low, so that way the oxygen being separated is at a lower transition than pure elemental oxygen. And then because of that, it allows the oxygen to now find where it really wants to be, the carbon dioxide. It then grabs onto that. And now as carbon dioxide doesn't want to be an amalgam with platinum. So it's released from the platinum metal and goes back out into the atmosphere. So the platinum facilitates those two transitioning into each other, but at no point is it actually consumed in the reaction.
Right. And it's not it well, I guess consumed is the word, but for us lay folk, it doesn't then become something else, right? Like
right.
When iron rusts, you now have a different thing, right? You have rust. Some of the iron has been converted into rust. None of the
iron oxide.
Right. None of the platinum has become platinum carbon, right? Like you still have the same amount of platinum when you're done. So does that mean like, would you, because chemistry is a sloppy bitch, if I remember the Martian correctly. So that catalyst process is probably not perfect. So do catalysts have to be like cleaned, recharged, refreshed, wrung out? You know what I mean? Like would it eventually maybe not free up all of its oxygen, and so you have to like scrape it off the top? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I believe that it varies from reaction to reaction, right? So some reactions are sloppier than others, and I believe that it basically is, it's like how much do the reactants want to be bonded to each other versus being bonded to the catalyst. So if the delta between those two things is incredibly high, then rarely, if ever, right? In the same thing with a catalytic converter, you don't need to replace that very regularly because it tends not to break down. But if it was one where it's like, yeah, it mostly wants to be in the product state, but it's also kind of happy with the catalyst, then your catalyst would wear out over time. So generally,
and that sounds like you would then want to find a better catalyst.
Yes, if you can find a better catalyst, or be prepared to replace your catalyst. And now that's when economics comes in, because it's like, oh, well, for example, you could say like, okay, well, I can use a platinum catalyst that has a 0.0001% reduction rate, or I could use an iron catalyst, which has a 0.1% degradation rate, which is 1,000 times worse, but iron's cheap and platinum's super expensive. So it's easier to replace a bad catalyst. And again, it's like, well, how pure do you need the product? Because if you've got your catalyst reacting as part of it, then it's going to taint and damage your product, right? And also too, it's you get law of conservation of mass. You got to account for all of it. So if you need exactly 5 kilograms of carbon dioxide by the time you're done, and your catalyst is going to break down in it, you've got to account for that, and math and chemical engineering and blah 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 blah. But in general, yes, the catalyst, a pure catalyst, would never be in any way consumed. In real life, yeah, that's definitely something that can happen. And also too is even a perfect catalyst assumes a perfect system, right? So, you've only got the reactants in there, but if you had just a little bit of contamination, now all of a sudden all of the chemistry changes. Because again, chemicals are zen, man. They'll bond with anything, which is why, all of a sudden it's like, I can't believe this thing poisoned me. And it's like, well, really, it's your body fighting against you in this case, because your body can do certain chemical reactions, but when you give it this other thing, it does other chemical reaction. They don't care,
No, this is, I feel like this is a lot clearer than it was before. I will endeavor to use them correct when like speaking colloquially, because I think that will like help to reinforce it. I am trying to imagine now, would my high school chemistry teacher be like, yeah, no, you get it? Or is he somewhere shaking his mustached head being like, nah, Nah, you still don't get it. I could see it on your face.
So, you get it. But yeah, no, I think that to me, the way I always remember it is just like, if you want to, and because generally speaking, catalysts speed up a process that could potentially happen normally, so that's not in every case, but most of the time it's like A plus B equals AB. But in the presence of a catalyst, A plus B equals AB way faster, so.
Am I understanding correctly that it is literally that the catalyst is like giving some order to the chemistry as opposed to waiting for it to just happen unordered? So like you have the catalytic converter, so the oxygen bonds to it, the carbon monoxide bonds to it, they then bond to each other and float away as carbon dioxide, right? And that could have happened naturally in the chamber, but by bringing the two things to the table, like I'm imagining a plate surface, but it's probably more like a tube, but like bringing the the chemicals you want to mix to the surface, it's like, well, people are more likely to meet in a bar if we like create this space where they are here, then they will pair off because we gave them a space to pair off.
Yeah, so that's actually a good analogy. So specifically what it does is it lowers the transition energy. So making sure that it's stereometrically, which is like to say like that it's lined up right, is a way to do that. There's a lot of different ways to do that, right? But what you're describing is absolutely one of them. So I think that it would be like, hey, we need people to couple up. And it's like, hey, man, we could just put them all in a bar because people, couple up in a bar. It's like, or we could, put them all together and just like strip them all down naked and make them all hang out because once all of their inhibitions are gone, like that'll be fine. Or we can get them all drunk,
That is a reality TV show. Like not even joking. Like there is actually a reality TV show that's like that. I think it's called Naked Love or something. Naked and Afraid. It's terrible.
I think both of those are I think they're different shows, but I think both shows exist. But it's like, or we can, get a bunch of alcohol, or we could throw a house party, or we could have Mardi Gras, but not Mardi Gras, because that's Mardi Gras TM, right? So there's a bunch of different ways to go about it, but as long as at the end of it, you have sped up the process and not consumed the Mardi Gras, as long as you've sped up the process and not consumed the apartment in the process or the bar, right? Then it would be a catalyst. And so that's why a lot of the times, the way I remember it is that you can say that thing A catalyzes thing B, right? And I think that the way that we decided to do this episode was that, a way to think about working out, because everybody is saying, like, oh, I need to work out more. And it's like working out is a catalyst to get your body to build muscle, but it is not the reactant. The proteins and food that you eat are the reactants. The muscle is the product, and working out catalyzes the process. But, it is not in and of itself the thing that produces the muscle.
Yep. Muscles are made in the kitchen, not in the gym, is
exactly
the folksy way I've heard it put. But this is good. We've gotten a bunch of questions from friends and foes and fans alike. But this one was mine. There are many like it, but this question is mine. So I appreciate you taking one from inside the house. This does, though, remind me of another question I wanted to ask you.